Well, ours is also social media. I guess ours are pro-social and yours are a little bit anti-social. And the difference is mostly just taking away the reply button on our side. It's almost magical. If you take away the reply button, there's no room for trolls to grow.
That was Audrey Tang, who I think may be from another planet, though she would say she's from the internet. She is brilliant. She is a thought leader in the truest sense of the world, a child prodigy who mastered classical literature, mathematics, and even programming before the age of 8. Insanely brilliant. She, or they, is the first transgender, non-binary official in the top executive cabinet of Taiwan. As that young country's first digital minister, she has garnered a lot of international attention by the way she helped shape bold new ways of thinking about consensus and governance in Taiwan, especially in their rapid response to the pandemic, leveraging government transparency rather than a countrywide lockdown. Let's dig in on this episode 14 of So What About Crypto?
So what about crypto?
So what about crypto?
So we cannot do this without our sponsors. Multo Marketing and Productions is a full-service ad agency and production company. They also produce this show. Their distributed team of experts from around the globe take care of whatever your marketing needs may be. Plus, being a production company, they create all of your media. You can find them at moltomarketing.com. That's MOLTO marketing.com. I also want to tell you about B Mortgage app. They are going to disrupt the entire mortgage industry with their patent-pending tech. AI, machine learning, and blockchain validation makes this little app the world's first end-to-end mortgage solution. Try their new home affordability calculator for free on the Apple App Store or Google Play. It is free and completely anonymous, and you can start the mortgage process right away. Find them at bemortgageapp.com. That's BEE mortgageapp.com. Hey, Billy, I have not been this excited. And frankly, even after 20 years of broadcasting, a little bit nervous because of our next guest. I think it's more of a excited nervous because we have been so looking forward to talking with her. And I just feel like, we could probably listen to her all day, but we would probably steal her and talk with her all day if we could, but we don't have that luxury. Yep. So I don't want to waste.
Busy.
Yes. I don't want to waste too much time before we get to her. And I know you are just as interested in speaking with her as well. I really want to bring in Audrey Tang, the digital minister of Taiwan, but I feel like that title just doesn't even scratch the surface of the person we're about to talk with and explore and learn from. So, Audrey, thank you so much for joining us. So, I know, when people hear your title, they think of something, very grand and very important. Are you selling these or are these? Because I'd like to, I would like to get one of the rainbow ones if I could, but we could talk about that afterwards. But I know when people hear your title, they think, something very grand and you're involved in the Taiwanese government and in something so important. And it is, your mission is very important, but you're so much more of a complex person than this title is able to convey. And I just wanted people to know that, in this short time that we get with you, there's so much more to you.
I'm anxious to learn some more about, Audrey, for sure. I remember I saw you on a TED Talk over the summer, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, gotta have Audrey on this show. I sent the link to Elsa, and she's like, hell yeah, we've got to do this. And but that's really the introduction. And so I thought it was a very eloquent display, and you said some really impactful things that, we resonate with a lot of the things we're trying to learn more about with crypto and blockchain, but tried to do a little more research on your history and all that. And I think it's pretty broad. So probably it's best coming from you rather than Wikipedia. So who in the, where'd you come from? The media darling all of a sudden,
Yeah, well, I come from planet Earth. I come in peace. And most importantly, I come from the internet. The work that you referred to, the TED.com talk, is more about how to apply the lessons that I learned as a high school dropout when I was 15 years old, and entered this world of internet governance, rough consensus, running code. The early internet is much like the early crypto culture, like everything is possible, permissionless innovation and things like that, and just trying to and rather successfully to apply it to day-to-day politics, to make sure that wisdom is at the edges, not the center, to make sure that the government trusts the people, not the other way around, the state transparent to the citizens, not the other way around. And that's what enabled us to win over the pandemic with no lockdown, and win over the infodemic with no takedown.
I do want to talk a little bit during our time together about the pandemic and how Taiwan has been able to successfully handle the pandemic, this crisis we've been dealing with. But one of the things that really resonated with me, as you know, I've spent my whole career as a journalist, and one of the things that we hold dear, and I know you hold dear as well, is that you are committed to battling disinformation, misinformation, fake news, and everything that comes with it, and truly believe that a strong democracy involves transparency. I think that resonated with me as a journalist, but upon learning about you more, I realized that perhaps that's been a theme throughout your entire life: transparency, living true to oneself, and making sure that the people have the power and not governments. We know you have a government title, if you will, of Digital Minister of Taiwan, but how you got there was quite the interesting journey. You alluded to the fact that you dropped out of junior high school when you were just a teenager. People might assume when they first hear that it's because someone may not be able to handle the learning load or isn't able to be successful in school. However, that wasn't your case. I believe you were probably way too advanced mentally to even waste your time in school like others typically do. Because, all you have to do is look at the history of your life so far. If people know that by the time you were 19 years old, you were already in Silicon Valley, you were, heading companies, creating companies.
Yeah, in my second startup.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Okay, sure. So, I dropped out middle high with the full blessing of my teachers and the head of the school, who agreed to fake the records of my attendance so I don't get fined by the compulsory education board. That was fun. And right after that, it's my first startup when I was like 15, 16, working on search engine, working on C2C auction. We built the first, eBay, auction site in Taiwan. It was a lot of fun. And then I discovered this free software movement, later on participated in its fork called the open source movement. And that will form the, core of my second startup, working on open source technologies and, collaboration tools. We built Open Foundry, which is rather like GitHub, except it's not based on Git because Git haven't been invented yet, but rather based on SVK, a kind of distributed version of Subversion, and many other things too. So as a internet entrepreneur, I guess a lot of my early experience centered around the idea that the knowledge needs to be democratized instead of the digital literacy or media literacy classes that I take as a primary and high schooler. I always thought that we should instead call it media competence and digital competence, meaning that each and every student are able to keep a journal and broadcast those journals called blogging, and then which made all of us potentially journalists. But instead of just calling us, text producers or video producers, there's something about the quality of text and about the checking of the sources, the balancing of the biases, the awareness of the framing effect, and things like that distinguishes journalistic text from just any text. And I think that is also what I was really passionate about, is about the digital competence of the entire generation. I'm really happy that now, after working in the K-12 curriculum, starting last year, we did actually switch to that frame of mind in our education curriculum in Taiwan. So that really warms my heart.
I'm sure anybody listening to this would hear that and think about your curriculum and how it's a complete departure of what we've been told about how we have to learn, what we have to learn, when we have to learn it, and so on. No matter what country you're in, we all follow this same pattern and study the same things. However, I feel there's never been an appreciation for the fact that people learn not only at different rates, but with different influences and at different times and associating with different things. I understand this more than ever. My daughter has Asperger's syndrome and ADHD. So I've learned through her, who is a straight A student, by the way, but we get there from completely non-conventional ways of her to learn and to grow from. So I am not resistant at all to completely shaking up the typical curriculums and the norms of how people learn and what they should learn. But what has it been like with other people accepting your curriculum and this new way to approach what we should learn?
Yeah, it's, I think, partly due to Taiwan history that we see democracy itself and indeed all the social technologies such as democracy are amenable to change and co-creation. When we had our first presidential election, that was 96, and also the year that World Web got really popular, also the year that I dropped out of middle high. And so all this made the fundamental assumptions of how the state should work, something that people can just write a blog about. And then we had like 5 constitutional amendments. We're working on 1 right now. So this is like in the beginning of a new status quo, a new normal, and people are all very eager to try out things. Add to that Taiwan has now more than 20 national languages. More than half are indigenous. Even on the ethnic Han side, there's Taiwanese Hakka, Taiwanese Holok, Mandarin, new immigrants from all over the world, and so on. And so this is what I refer to as a transcultural republic of citizens. The various perspectives of all the different cultures around, say, gender stereotypes and so on. Because they're so pluralistic, it's very easy then for people to simply say, let's improve upon the curriculum. Let's improve on how university should work. It should work more with the community placemaking SDGs and so on, and just get a working model from one of the pilot cases, one of the cultures somewhere in Taiwan. So a lot of my work as a digital minister in charge of social innovation is just to tour around Taiwan, meet the people who made the change makers, and then amplify their voices and their innovations. So yeah, we've not encountered much resistance because in a sense we are the resistance.
Much that I've learned about you, Audrey, has involved a lifelong path of learning. Child prodigy in literature, classical literature by the time you were 5, advanced mathematics by the time you were 6. Junior high was so easy that you had to leave. You were CEO and creating companies by 19 in Silicon Valley. what led you into politics with such a background in academia?
Yeah, we occupied the parliament for 3 weeks, so it's not like somebody invited us in. We invited ourselves. So it was 2014, March, and the MPs were refusing to deliberate substantially a trade agreement with Beijing. And so because the MPs were on strike, I guess, that was the theory anyway. So we occupied the place they work to do the work that they should have worked on. And so 500,000 people occupied the street, many more online. And I worked with a lot of people in the G0V or Gov0 movement to provide communication and live streaming so that the 20 NGOs, each deliberating on one part of the CSSTA. For example, there's one slide that deliberated on whether we need to really allow the so-called private sectors from the PRC, the Beijing side, into our then new 4G infrastructure, or it would actually be amortized with all the systemic risk analysis too expensive, even if it looks initially inexpensive. Now, that's a conversation everybody is having this year around the world, except we had that conversation on the street like 6 years ago. And so that really empowered the democracy because it's a demonstration not as a protest, but demonstration as a demo. It showed that with the proper facilitation and proper listening skill technologies that I've always been working on for my entire career as an entrepreneur, actually people can produce pretty good rough consensus, shared feelings and all, and which were then ratified as the consensus by the head of the parliament. So the Occupy was a success, and we've not had any work with the PRC components in our 4G network. And so because of that, I was invited then as a reverse mentor to the cabinet member at the end of 2014. So kind of like a intern that also is a consultant, and I work a couple years in that role. And then when Dr. Taiwan won the presidential election, I was invited back to the same physical office that I worked in as, I guess, a full-time minister.
So I want to see if I'm drawing this analogy that I think you alluded to, that when you speak of consensus, are you saying that, consensus in that case were the hundreds of thousands of people in the street?
Yeah, and the humming kind of consensus, like, so like not the kind of consensus that everybody signed their name on, but rather the rough consensus that we refer to, well, in distributed ledger, but also in internet governance, it's called rough consensus, things that people broadly agree on along the way, and that enable running code, meaning that we can do implementations. Now we have rough consensus, but we may disagree on the details, but the sentiment is resonating and is shared among the stakeholders. That's the kind of rough consensus that I was referring to.
Yeah, and so in that line of speaking of consensus, what really got my attention in your TED Talk, as I recall, and it's been months since I've seen it, but was about consensus. And what struck me, just because of the time we're living in, was that it was almost what you were describing and what you guys are doing there is certainly a better consensus than Twitter. It was like a real consensus. You built it in a way that your citizenry could express their consensus, and you guys as the government or parliament and, executives could take that consensus and actually work with it. I think what we are really dealing with here in the United States is a consensus by Twitter, and which is not consensus. It's just, mob.
Social media in general.
Well, ours is also social media. I guess ours are pro-social and yours are a little bit anti-social. And the difference is mostly just taking away the reply button on our side. It's almost magical. If you take away the reply button, there's no room for trolls to grow.
I love it. I think taking in my case, I'll just take away the whole Twitter icon.
Me too.
I'll just quit using it.
Yeah, write a browser plugin or something.
You're right.
Perhaps that would work. But, I feel like, again, there is a running theme in your life with not just transparency, but consensus, which would seem like a natural transition to blockchain and the accepting of the idea, not just the idea, but actual putting into practice what blockchain technology does, digital currencies, what blockchain technology can do for privacy and cybersecurity. Have you made that connection? Do you see the parallels in your life as a person running alongside with technology and what happens and develops in politics and in your country?
Yeah, definitely. So when I became the digital minister, I had 3 working conditions that I negotiated publicly. One is radical transparency. All the conversations that I had, including this one, is to be published as either video or transcript into the Creative Commons. And the other 2 was location independence. Anywhere I work, I call it my office. And also, importantly, all the secondments in my office are voluntary associates, meaning that I don't give them orders and I don't take orders. Again, something I would say resonates with the blockchain community. But because of the kind of unfamiliarity of the population and indeed my cabinet colleagues about these principles, I made a point almost right after I became the digital minister to meet someone in my place, in my residence, and recorded the entire conversation, demonstrating how I could be doing work and in my home in a remote way, but also maintaining perfect transparency. And the person that I chat with was Vitalik Buterin, and we talked about rough consensus about using pro-social media to deliver consensus and better voting methods than the one that he was using for the DAO fork, and also about the imminent structural pressures on the Ethereum blockchain, which, by the way, they solved just, I think, 3 days ago through this 2.0 thing. So congrats.
Yes.
And also, we liken that to the climate change. Like this kind of pressure puts on the blockchain motivates the community to come up with genuinely structural solutions, and that elevates people into a more longer term thinking, and which actually is also physically related, because if they don't solve the Ethereum 2.0 problem, they're contributing to the Earth climate change thing. So later on, I would join Radical Exchange, a social innovation organization internationally, started by Glenn Weil, but also with Vitalik and yours truly as board members. And ever since then, I've been just taking the Radical Exchange ideas, prototype on Ethereum, like Gitcoin, quadratic voting and funding and so on, and then applying it in, for example, the presidential hackathon in Taiwan has for a couple of years been using quadratic voting. So that's straight like research from the blockchain community and then deployed into politics.
I can't imagine. I mean, and I know this has to be on people's minds who are watching or who will later watch, and especially yours for many, many years. You are so dedicated to transparency and consensus and privacy for the citizenry of Taiwan. I can't imagine what a target you must be for the government of China. You are so outspoken about it, and you move about freely, and you live true to yourself. People would argue that is completely opposite of what others are allowed to do in China. What is it like to live this way and know that you may have this shadow always kind of lurking around the corner, watching what you do, everything you do?
Well, it's been like that since I was really young. I mean, my dad's PhD thesis was studying the dynamics of the Tiananmen protest, which happened when I was 8 years old, in the 4th of June. And he was there, like physically in the Beijing, in Tiananmen Square, like all until the 1st of June, where he went back to Taiwan. Fortunate for our family, I guess. And so then he went to Saarland, to Germany, and studied for his thesis. and his research involved a lot of interviews with the Tiananmen exiles, the young people who participated in the protest. And I remember meeting them in our living room because I went to Germany for a year studying with my father and just talking about the democratization of the PRC. And those very young, like just in their early 20s, people all had a lot to say and a lot to reflect after their recent frustration in the Tiananmen Square. Some of them would later on be professors in the Taiwan universities, and some of their students would end up occupying the parliament of Taiwan. And so, it's always been like this. And I firmly believe that we should, of course, not only speak freely, as you alluded to, but also provide a safe space for other people, such as the people running bookstores, first in Hong Kong, now in Taiwan, to voice their ideas and to provide a safe place for the Hong Kong students through student exchange programs to be now safely in Taiwan and participating, say, in the Oslo Freedom Forum, or interviewed by Reporters Without Borders, and all of which are now headquartered in Taiwan as their Asia headquarters.
So what is it like in a day in the life of Audrey Tang as you go about your mission, your business? What is it like for you? Do you worry? Do you not think about it? Do you always know it's there, but you continue on? How do you approach life every day, knowing that, you have that to contend with?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So basically, I wake up talking to usually the U.S., sometimes East Coast, sometimes other parts of the U.S. friends. And right before I go to sleep in the evenings, I usually talk to African and European colleagues. Especially this year, it's like nonstop time zone transition. So my greeting is now, the standard greeting is now good local time, everyone.
I can attest to that. When I met him on this feed, I said,
yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I said, good morning. He says, good local time.
Yeah, good local time. Good local time. I have no idea which time zone you're in.
I like that. That saves you from
that's right.
having to try to remember who and where you're talking to people. Yes.
Right. But that mentality, this kind of overview effect, like looking at the Earth from the International Space Station and looking at the Earth's rotation and so on, I guess liberates us from this like PRC versus Taiwan point of view, which is rather narrow, but rather a truly global point of view that shows, of course, there are different polities, there are different norms, different ideas. Just the term privacy mean very different things for people in all the different time zones. But yet there are unifying strands that unifies the Homo sapiens community. The emphasis on, for example, our innovation is for sustainability, to leave the Earth a better place than when we locked down Earth, I guess. And these are the things that unifies people's ideas together, even in the PRC. So I'm rather optimistic about the kind of technology that we're doing would actually be empowering the humankind or the Homo sapiens community in general. And that's what the blockchain developers must do, because most of their work are open source, which means that it will get used by PRC colleagues. And unless you believe that this technology amortized on average is for the better, you probably wouldn't choose the open source license.
And so I'll take it a slightly different direction, but just in regards to you're a cabinet level position in Taiwan, very young country that has really gone through radical transformations that, I think I'm probably in line with a lot of our listeners where we're just not aware of that history that you've lived through as a country. You were probably under martial law at the time you were born, and now you've become a democracy. You've seen, people occupying parliament. Now suddenly you're the digital minister. It's just a radical transformation in a historical fashion, maybe accelerated like the internet has accelerated the world. So I'd love it if you could just share a little bit with our listeners about how you personally in your role are helping form the way your government is operating and how that sort of collaborates and affects and helps the citizenry and how they've responded to it. If you could just sort of elaborate on that.
Certainly. So, modern day Taiwan is very different from what I remember as a young child under martial law. Both my parents were journalists. They had to work a lot to rewrite their reports because of the censorship by the single party. So in a sense, we do understand what's it like to be working as a journalist under PRC, because just 40 years ago, that was our life. Anyway, but modern day Taiwan, of course, very different. More than 40% women in the parliament, 100% women as the president, and marriage equality, the first in Asia to do so, the only in Asia at the moment, things like that. So I think my work mostly is just enabling people who have a good idea to start a petition on the Join the Gov, the TW, the participation platform, which combines, for a U.S. listener, regulation.gov, which is the regulatory pre-announcements and commentary board, We the People, which is the petitioning part, participatory budgeting. Well, some of your cities do so, some of cities doesn't, and also a lot of other novel like quadratic voting and polis, which probably doesn't have a U.S. institutional counterpart at the moment. But in any case, the point is that for us, democracy is not just about uploading 3 bits every 4 years, which is called voting in elections, but rather a day-to-day, like live streaming, a continuous democracy. So, for example, I would see someone starting a petition, and in a few short days, they would reach 5,000 people. The petition would call for the banning of the plastic straws of our national identity drink, the bubble tea, and because it, pollutes the ocean, and it's not
well, I just love how you called
friendly.
it your national drink, the boba tea.
Yeah, that's right. It should have been on our passport.
It's popular here too. My daughter loves it too.
I know. It's what sushi is for Japan, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So to ban the plastic straw, that's a really big deal. So, and then we met with the petitioner. Turns out she was just 16 years old. And we asked her, why would you start this movement? Like Greta, right? Just this movement of banning plastic straws. And she's like, it's our civics class assignment. The teacher just said, there's this new petition website. Think of something that would resonate with people. And that's literally her assignment. And so, it really, convinced the people of the older generation who manufacture those single-use utensils. And many of them who participate in that meeting said they started working on this 30 years ago as a social entrepreneur because hepatitis B was a really big deal in Taiwan back then. So their work at the time doing those single-use utensils is just like making masks this year. But Hep B, of course, is fixed. There's a drug for that, right? So they don't need to work on that so much now. So they're also working on value-added ways. So circular economy really hip in Taiwan, but they don't know how to start, especially the marketing side. So the younger people who petitioned to ban the plastic straw eventually turned to become kind of marketing ambassadors for the value-added biodegradable, like this jacket is made out of recycled plastic bottles and also coffee bean waste. So this kind of material is also pretty good marketing material. So they started working a co-creation dynamic, not just a protest versus establishment dynamic, and that's what enabled by this petition platform, if it's followed through by a multi-stakeholder meeting that builds rough consensus, common values out of different positions.
I love it. I was thinking about this. You're the digital minister, which we don't even have that in the United States. Most countries don't. But what if you were the digital minister of the United States? What would you, knowing what you know about us and what we're going through, we're obviously different. We're in different worlds, in so many ways. From your viewpoint, what would you do if you became a digital minister of the United States? What would be the first few things you would try to implement?
First of all, I'll hop on the What About Crypto podcast.
Oh, so you're already the digital minister then?
Oh, I'd like to hear that. Thank you.
No, engage the most innovative, the most out of the box and build a new box community, right? Because that's the spirit that's needed by any government, the U.S. government included. Because the people in the blockchain community, much as the World Web pioneers or the Internet pioneers, we don't really like when we criticize existing systems, the institution establishments, we don't actually bother criticizing it that much. We channel our energy into building new systems that doesn't suffer from the previous flaws. So people working on Ethereum 2.0 doesn't spend much time criticizing like the Bitcoin blockchain because there's no point doing so unless you can prove, of your stake. But anyway, to prove through some way and shows that a better system is possible through mathematics. And that, I think, is really needed because unless we channel the energy at the polarizing edges into the co-creational energy that I just alluded to and showing people that there is actually a living community, the open innovation community, open access community, and certainly the distributed ledger community that's already figured out how to work at scale on this kind of mentality, on this kind of community impetus, then ordinary citizens, if they see this kind of models as possible, and that is the whole point of why I arranged my first official meeting as the Digital Minister of Taiwan with Vitalik Buterin, is just to show the possibility of such a way of thinking. Mm-hmm.
To those of us who are in this space, we are able to see in real time what this technology can do. And we talk about bringing people together and a consensus and, peace and protesting to get what you want changed.
Self-sovereignty.
And coming together. Yeah, self-sovereignty. This may seem idealistic to a lot of people, but it's actually happening. How do you envision the world overall if every country was able to do this? And would you even be in favor of having countries and states at all?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a really good question. I guess for me as a conservative anarchist, the conservative part is about conserving the culture of the 20 national languages in Taiwan and all the existing traditions in the Homo sapiens community. And the anarchist part is about not giving orders nor taking orders, but work on rough consensus. I'm all for keeping the country, the TLDs, right? You see .tw, and we're neighbors to .tv, to Tuvalu. And I see no problem keeping those, two-letter, TLDs, because these are pretty nice short domain names, and it doesn't claim this kind of coercive power over one another. So yeah, I don't think there's much wrong with those country CCTLDs. On the other hand, the state, if you say the state is a apparatus that monopolizes violence, that kind of excludes alternate institutions from happening, then indeed this whole end-to-end innovation principle creates trouble for that Westphalian thought, because the Westphalian thought really can be realized only if both ends in the end-to-end encrypted connection. So the crypto, the end, and the end that receives, all three need to be within the same jurisdiction for the Westphalian imagination to work. If the crypto is outside of the state apparatus, if one of the two ends is outside of the state apparatus, then the Westphalian illusion just disappeared by the virtue of the internet protocols and the cryptos. And so because of that, I think the imagination about Westphalian mutual exclusivity is just blurring and maybe dissipating in a generation or two, because people all have experienced how's it like to join a truly transcultural and international community that has the end-to-end principle as its first principle.
So do you foresee the governments needing to compete for citizens?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you are a U.S. citizen, but you're welcome to register the TW domain names.
Yeah.
Audrey, I wanted to ask you, because maybe it's the former lit major in me. When I went to university, I spent a lot of time comparing and contrasting different works. And sometimes I look at people's lives and the directions they've taken and the paths they've taken. I look at the parallels in their lives and maybe what influenced them. I see a huge influence in you in not only academia and politics, but, we talked about them before, consensus, freedom, and everything that comes with it. Do you feel that you were able to make a transition as a human being and identifying as transgender and non-binary? Do you think that's a natural progression for you, considering the path you have taken your entire life? And if so, how long have you felt or known that this is your true self?
Yeah, I mean, the personal computer and later the internet really doesn't care about your gender, right? And when I participated in one of my first communities, it's a multi-user dungeon. I don't know how many people still remember those. There's like literally 7 or more genders to choose from because it emits like the high fantasy setting. And so to me, it's always what Judith Butler would call gender performance. Like the fact that I alluded to that you can get a .tw domain name even as a US citizen because it's just different perspectives to look at the world. And I don't have this binary idea in my mind. As digital minister, I'm more, I don't know, hexadecimal than binary, or decimal than binary. Right. So, so I don't have these categories in my mind that says, hey, half of the human population is closer to me, and the other half of human population is more distant to me. Having gone through 2 puberties, I would say that everybody is probably of equal distance-ish to me, and I'm more able to empathize with other people. So it's always with me, I guess, and I see everyone really can be a little bit more transgender if you choose more, I don't know, rainbow or pink medical masks.
So you're saying, because I think a lot of people would say that you would feel more isolated from all people being in your position, but you're stating the opposite in a way.
Oh, yeah, sure. Because, if you have gone through a puberty, I've gone through that puberty too. Yeah.
When you were a child, did you have these same feelings?
Yeah, definitely. Because as a child, a lot of my time is spent on the earlier classics, actually, as you just mentioned, not just the poems, but also the philosophy, the text of Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, the early text of Taoism, and so on. And it also portrays a maximally empathizing worldview that's not bound by particular ethnicities or race or gender or whatever.
Okay, so we probably need to wrap this up because, Audrey's a minister who has a parliamentary appointment.
Yes, and I do understand.
I have to go to the parliament. Yeah.
I know, we have to share you.
In moments. But I have one last question. Hopefully it's not too provocative or, time consuming, but I know you think a lot about AI and the like. So where do you see AI taking society or governance, for instance? Like, how would it implement governance of people, which seems like a natural progression?
So, to me, AI stands for assistive intelligence. And when we pair AI to make rough consensus, like Polis is an application of AI, I call it assisted collective intelligence, or ACI. And that is a really human dignity first way to look at AI, because we can then make a discretion between the AI that aligns with one's values. For example, this glass enhance my eyesight without showing pop-up advertisements. So it's obviously aligning with my values. And also it's accountable when it breaks, because I can just take it to a person who know how to fix the optics, but they don't need a license or permission from the manufacturer of this particular glass. So it's vendor neutral. So there are properties that we look in the assistive technologies, my grandma's hearing aid, or really any assistive technology that we take for granted. So the more we think of AI as assistive, the more we can invest in the kind of assistive collective intelligence. On the other hand, if we don't do that, then AI doesn't enslave people, by the way. People enslave people through AI. And they could do that through authoritarian intelligence. The application of the same AI technology is just like in Taiwan, when we say transparency in government, we mean making the state and how the state works transparent to the citizens. But in the PRC, when they say transparency in governance, they mean making the citizens transparent to the state. So the same word, like very different meanings. And so the same word AI in some cases mean for people authoritarian and even generalized authoritarian intelligence, or AGI, which would hold authority and singularity indeed on a lot of things. And that, of course, is again maybe same acronym AI, but very different direction. I think we should certainly hold the assistive direction and prove that it's actually a more sustainable model than the authoritarian direction.
That's an extremely enlightening way to look at it, and a very good comparison and contrast.
Well, I've heard you say code. I think I heard you say on an interview, code is the physics of the internet.
Yes, the law, right?
Well,
the physical law.
Yeah, if we could have that physics built into AI that has ethics and transparency in a good way, I'm not as scared of it.
Exactly right. And we have new like physical laws, the crypto laws with us, right? The ZK family of algorithms, the fully homomorphic encryptions, which I'm very excited in, all sorts of secure multi-party computation, a lot of things that can help us along the way.
Well, Audrey, we can't thank you enough for spending some time with us.
Yeah.
This very short but very impactful interview has been so enjoyable, and I really hope it inspires people who are watching or who will watch to discover and explore some of the topics we discussed today. So thank you again. I could listen to you all day, but I know you have a life and you need to get back to it. So again, thank you.
Thank you. Live long and prosper.
I am so glad, and I feel very lucky that we were able to get Audrey to fit us into her busy schedule. She told us she had to hurry off to a parliamentary inquiry, so we're so glad she was able to fit us in. All right, I am not going to downplay this. We definitely need you to give us a review so we can get more and more people to listen. We're on all the platforms, so whatever you're listening on, you can find the review section and show us a little bit of love. You can hit us up at info@adventuresincrypto.tv, or you can always find me on Twitter at Elsa Ramon on air. Thank you so much again, Multo Marketing and Productions, for sponsoring and producing the show. Their team is located around the world, literally, but you can find them at multomarketing.com. That's MOLTO marketing.com. And if you or someone you know is in the market for a home, get the B Mortgage app on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Calculate your home buying power completely anonymously. This is for U.S. residents only at this time. Just search BEE Mortgage. I'm Elsa. Thanks for coming along. This is a live Q&A discussion about Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, tokens, projects, investments, and technology. All discussions are strictly the opinions of each speaker. Statements made by guests are not necessarily the opinion of the host and producers. Investments in Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, tokens, and even stocks are speculative and risky. The information contained herein is for informational purposes only. We are not financial advisors nor registered investment advisors, and all of our content is intended for general personal information purposes. You must do your own due diligence before investing in anything, especially anything related to cryptocurrencies and tokens. Investments always carry risk. Never risk more of anything than you're willing to lose.
So, what about crypto?